Since its inception in the year 2011, TradingView has quickly become the go-to solution for all charting needs that the average beginner or advanced trader needs. Around 90 million users are currently using TradingView, making it by far the most popular choice out there when it comes to tools that help you to analyze the financial markets. In this video, I'll walk you through everything you need to know about TradingView, from setting up simple charts to mastering its advanced features like coding your own indicators, so you can make the most out of this incredible platform. By the end, you'll be equipped to leverage TradingView like a pro, saving time, optimizing your trading workflow, and making your life much easier as a trader. Oh, and here's a bonus. If you use my link to create a TradingView account, you'll get $15 off your next subscription. That's enough to make the Essential plan free for 1 month. So it's the perfect way to get started without spending a dime. The link is in the description below. Don't miss out. Let's dive in and unlock the full potential of TradingView. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, obviously, is we need to sign up for a TradingView account. And as I said in the beginning of this video, if you want, use my link here in the description of this video so you can get $15 off towards your first subscription plan. Talking about subscription plans, there are different subscription plans. They come at an annual price, so you are charged for 12 months per year, which are a little bit cheaper compared to the monthly plans where you are charged every month. You can see here that I'm on the premium plan, which costs me around 60 euro every month. There's a free version also available here, which normally is here underneath those plans, I believe. Of course, since I am a subscriber already, this one doesn't appear for me. Starts here with the Essential plan, and I highly recommend also to at least use this Essential plan because the paid plans offer a variety of benefits over the free one. Talking about what is included in every type of subscription, every type of plan here is, for example, on the free version, you're only allowed to have 1 chart per tab, and you're only allowed to save 1 layout. What is that chart per tabs? What does that mean? For example, here you can see I'm viewing 6 different assets here, 6 different cryptocurrencies at the same time. So if I would be on the free plan, I only could have, for example, the chart of Solana open at any given time, and I only could also save 1 of these chart layouts and not like it is here on the premium plan, unlimited chart layouts. And believe me, if you get into trading and you're looking at maybe 50, 60 or 100 assets every day, it's really not great if you have to go through the manual labor and open those charts manually again, that you cannot save enough chart layouts. So with the Essential plan here, you have at least 2 charts per tab. So instead of 6, 2 here, that helps you a lot, especially that you can save 5. There are a number of other benefits also, for example, custom time frames. So I like to work personally, for example, a lot with 2-minute time frames here, which are also not available in the free version of TradingView. But by the end of the day, of course, this is completely up to you. All right, let's go back here to the homepage. The first thing you will always see when you start up TradingView is this market summary page, where you can see different asset classes summarized. So you have a quick overview here, for example, for indices, what is currently going on there. We saw, for example, the S&P 500 was trading lower, the Nasdaq especially was trading lower. Of course, you can, if you scroll here, you'll see more here. So you can, if you're from Russia or you're from China, you can also find maybe the indices there that are important to you. Now, TradingView is navigated by 3 things. You can access every product up here. You can search for things, and you can access community features, alarms, and a so-called watch list here on the right. Don't worry, we'll go through everything here to make sure that you know your way around here. So let's start here with a search. If you're, for example, looking for something very quickly, like you can type in here the symbol. Let's, for example, say we want to have a look at Bitcoin. So I type in Bitcoin here, and you can see it gives me here the option if I hover over Bitcoin, Bitcoin US dollar, to either launch a chart or see an overview. Let's start here with seeing an overview. So if I click on this, I get shown the last price of Bitcoin on this exchange here. I can see the change. I can see a quick chart, an intraday chart here, for example. I can, of course, modify this chart if I want to see, for example, the last year, how was the performance of Bitcoin, or since the start of the year 2025, what was the performance of Bitcoin. I can see news about Bitcoin, for example. So this will only filter news that are relevant for the symbol I'm looking at, in this case, Bitcoin. I can, and this is very nice, look at ideas. So ideas means here ideas from other users of TradingView that share their view on this asset. For example, Bitcoin. Like this person here who's writing Bitcoin, we are nowhere near the top. If I'm interested in that, I can click on this. Will open here a new window. I can read through the analysis. I can leave comments. I can like the analysis, and so on and so forth. So this is really, really neat, because you can quickly really get a view on what are currently other users of a TradingView platform thinking about the assets that I want to look at. Very neat functionality, and it shows also that TradingView is not just a platform to analyze the markets. It's also a platform to share your ideas with other people out there. Same here with discussions, like people writing, for example, here about Bitcoin. If you want, you can engage in this. You can have a look at technicals for Bitcoin. For example, here for the last day, is this asset according to these metrics, for example, a strong sell or strong buy. So you can see in summary here, seems like Bitcoin is a strong buy here according to those metrics. And yeah, I highly encourage you here to just, click yourself through a little bit, have a look at what all this means, and kind of get for yourself a feeling of, what is like the what do I need from this, what is essential for me, what is not so essential. The second thing you can do here is, for example, you can also look for people. If you want to follow me, for example, here on TradingView, you can type in here crypto for money, which is my TradingView name, go to people, and you'll see me basically. You can see like how many followers I have here, how many ideas I've published, scripts that I've published that are free to use, and so on and so forth. So very, very neat there, which brings me also to something that you really should do. So one of the first things that you should do when logging into TradingView for the first time is click on the icon here above and go to the so-called profile settings, where you can change, for example, your username, where you can upload an avatar, so a picture of yourself if you like. You can choose here if you want people to see you online. You can choose here if you're on Twitter, your Twitter handle. In my case here, a link to my YouTube channel and other things here. And also, of course, change here the mail that you've signed up with. I highly, highly encourage you also to set up two-factor authentication. So in case, which will protect you at least somewhat more against being hacked, for example, against other people abusing your account. You can see here, let's quickly go back to the homepage. Now, one thing about the homepage is here also everything you can access here, you can also access by scrolling down here. So it's a little bit like, the starting page, for example, of the typical social media platform like YouTube or Bilibili, if you are, for example, looking at Chinese social media. So you have here the community ideas for some assets out there today. Of course, a lot here to talked about Nvidia, which was falling as a stock by a large degree yesterday. You can see here indicators and strategies that other users have coded. So this is also very neat. You can see the top stories, like what is driving the markets. US stocks here, for me at least, is which are the highest volume traded stocks, which gained the most, which lost the most, and so on and so forth. Same here, of course, for the whole world. All of this you can configure, of course, also to the markets of your choice. Now, the fundamental reason why a lot of people, including myself, are actually using TradingView is, of course, the charting tool. And you can access this charting tool if you, for example, click up here on Super Charts. So this will open a new window. In my case now, it opens this window because this is the last chart I was working with. Can be that if you open it for the first time, that like nothing is there. So I'm going to click here on a new layout. Now remember, like when you are on the free plan, you can only have one of those layouts. So it would not be possible to have this layout, for example, and this layout open at the same time if I'm only on the basic plan. This is also one of the reasons, why I highly recommend to at least go for the essential plan. Usually there is an asset pre-selected. So in my case, it's Solana here. However, when you log in here for the first time, it might look totally different for you. Let's quickly go here through all the things and what they mean. So you'll notice here a couple of things. You have here on the top a couple of things that you can select. You have a menu here on the left, which is where you can find all the tools that help you to do drawings on the chart or to analyze the chart. And you have things here on the right. Let's start here at the very top left. Here you can select the asset you want to look at. So for example, we can stick, for example, here with Bitcoin again. So I want to, for example, see how is Bitcoin, like the all-time history index of Bitcoin on, for example, daily chart, which is the next menu here. So if you click here on what is showing here as 5M at the moment, which stands for 5 minutes, you can choose a custom interval. And depending here also on the plan that you are currently at, this goes from, for example, 1 second, in my case, to charts of 12 months or even ranges. So for example, I want to select here a daily chart, which means now on this chart, every dot on this chart symbolizes a day. Now I've selected a line chart here. I want to switch to using the next menu to, for example, a candlestick chart, meaning every one of these candles you see here symbolizes one day. For candlestick charts, if you see a red candle, that means the closing price of that day was lower than the opening price. If you see a green candle on the opposite, means the closing price of a day was higher than the opening price. The wick here on the top is the highest price of a day. The wick on the bottom is the lowest price of a day. Now, there are many, many different charts here. The simplest one being a line chart, where you only have actually one information per day. So by the end of the day, a new dot is going to be drawn on this chart. For example, if Bitcoin were to close right now, the dot would be here at 102,843.84 US dollars. And then the next day, a new dot is drawn with a closing price, and those dots are connected. So you don't get a lot of information. You only can see, for example, here what the closing price of Bitcoin was. If I zoom out here a little bit with my mouse wheel, nonetheless, you can see this can be a very useful chart, since it helps me to see just essentially what trend is the asset I'm looking at the moment in. Usually what people like to use are so-called candlestick charts, as I said here already, where you can already see 4 times the information that you can see from a line chart. You can see here where was the opening price, where the closing price, where was the high price, and the low price, just within one candle. So I suggest really using candlestick charts because they offer you just more information. Because with a line chart here, for example, if we look at the day yesterday where the market went all the way down to 98,000 US dollars, this is information, of course, we cannot see on a line chart. There we can only see, the market closed at 102,400 US dollars, but we don't see that it was quite a volatile day where in between the market went down by quite a margin. So you can select here the different charts over this menu here on the top. Just very quickly here, I don't want to go in this video too much into the different charts. One chart I like to actually use are so-called Heikin Ashi candles. They look a lot like the normal candlesticks you've just seen, but they average the price. However, if you are very new to all of this, I recommend for the beginning at least to stick here with candlestick charts. Don't worry, we will in the future also do a video on the pros and cons of different charts out there. Now, if we want to add so-called indicators to our charts, you can find this here in the menu Indicators. If you go here to Technicals, you can find a lot of pre-built indicators already. I think it's over 200 indicators that come with TradingView that you can access for free. So you'll find the normal indicators out there. For example, popular one, RSI, Relative Strength Index. If I click on this, it will load up. Remember here on the basic plan, you can only add one indicator to the chart. So if I want to go now and add more indicators, maybe a moving average, I need to be already on the essential plan to do that. So adding a moving average will add a line here. I can then also change the settings of those indicators. If I go here, for example, for our moving average to the top left and click on this menu setting here, I can change the settings of this indicator. The moving average, for example, the simple moving average, I should say, comes standard with a standard length of 9. But I could, for example, say I want to have the moving average with a length of 50, because this is something a lot of people are looking at as well. You see it changed immediately. 50 means it shows now the average price of Bitcoin for the past 50 candles. I can add here smoothings to that. I can, for example, say here I don't want this moving average based on what the time frame of my chart is. Remember, we're looking at a daily chart here. I could, for example, say I want to display here the 5-minute moving average. So for the past 55 minutes candles, I can do that there. You see it changes also here very quickly, of course. However, I'm going to leave it here at 1 day. I can also here change how my moving average is displayed. So for example, the color of a moving average, if it's like fully visible or a little bit in the background, I can choose here if I want, for example, a very thick line. And I can also display on which charts is this going to be visible. Like normally you want, of course, this average be shown on all charts. Same I can do here with my RSI, for example. So when I go down here, click here on settings, it also opens a menu where I can manipulate everything on the RSI. So quite powerful, and there are a lot of things that you can change, a lot of things you can play around with. By the end of the day, you of course have to choose, what do you want to see on a chart and what don't you want to see on a chart. Next menu up here are so-called indicator templates. This combination of indicator, what I just created, so my 50 days moving average in combination with the RSI. I could, for example, say now I want to save this so I can quickly apply this also to my other charts, but I don't always need to go here to the indicator menu and then search for those two indicators again. And I can do this here by saving an indicator template. And then, for example, here I've now opened a new chart of the S&P 500. I can just go here again and say, oh, this is my TradingView tutorial indicator template. One click on it, and it will apply the 50 days moving average plus the RSI again to the chart, without me having to go up here and select those indicators manually again. So this can definitely save you some time and make things a little bit more comfortable. I can also create so-called alerts up here. So if I click on this here, I can, for example, tell TradingView that I want to be notified by TradingView automatically when specific things happen. For example, I could say here, well, when the Bitcoin price is trading less than let's say 100,000 US dollars. Then I want to be alarmed by TradingView. So I can choose here, should this alarm trigger only once, or should this alarm trigger every time Bitcoin is trading below 100,000. In this case, I only want to be alarmed once. I can select here how long this alert is going to be valid. I can add here a custom name if I want to, and a message that is displayed. In this case, the message would be Bitcoin US dollar less than 100,000. On the second tab here, I can select how TradingView is going to notify me. So if you have, for example, the TradingView app also installed on your mobile phone, you can click this here that you're getting a message, an alert message from the TradingView app on your mobile phone. You can, for example, also select that you want a mail sent. It will then automatically send the alert message to the mail that you have in your profile settings. You could do a so-called webhook URL, meaning if you are using third-party applications, like, for example, Telegram, that automatically this alert message is posted to a Telegram channel. I'm doing that, for example, with my trading community, so that at the times where I cannot be in front of my trading desktop here, that still, the members of the community are notified about this. Play a sound here. So when I'm sitting here with my headphones on, I also see by the sound, or notice by the sound, that there was an alert that was triggered. Or I can enter here a new email as an alternative email where the alert then is sent as well. So very, very neat. The higher your plan is, the more alert messages you can set up. I believe, like with the basic and the essential plan, there's only a number of alert messages at the same time that you can have. As I said, the more you go into trading, probably the more alert messages you will also need. It's definitely a feature, for example, that I use a lot. Now, the next thing here is the so-called replay function. I think this is very, very neat. So I can, for example, say, like, I want to see how the market was behaving from this day going forward. And you can speed this up here. So, for example, by a factor of 3. And then it will replay the way the market was behaving. This is especially very neat, when you want to, for example, try trading a bit and paper trade some new trading strategies to kind of test yourself, am I able to trade this basically in real time, or is there something missing that I still need to set up? So definitely a very nice feature to have here. I'm using that one also a lot. All right, so this brings us to the end here of the top menu. By the way, I could also, if I click here on that plus, add another symbol. So if I want, for example, to compare how is Bitcoin performing in comparison to the S&P 500, as I said here, I click on the plus. Then, for example, I go here to SPX, which stands for the S&P 500, and say, like, I want this on the same percentage scale to compare how is Bitcoin doing. For example, we can see here, for example, if we zoom in a little bit, since the chart started here, Bitcoin is up by 6.4%, while the S&P 500 is down by 1.28%. So very nice and unique feature if you, for example, want to visualize correlations between pairs. So if you want to see, like, if you're trading more than one pair, for example, and you want to analyze what is, for example, the other asset I'm doing, how does it perform when Bitcoin goes up a day? Does it also go up, or does it go down, or doesn't it really care about the price of Bitcoin? Because you don't want to end up, only trading assets that all go into the same direction at the same time. Why should you trade then 20 different assets? You might as well just trade also one asset then. Now, the next feature is probably something that you guys are going to use the most, because this is all about drawing onto charts here. So I'm going to delete here our indicators again. I'm going to delete here the volume also, so we have a little bit more space for drawing. So what I can do here, I have different tools to visualize things on the chart, starting here with so-called trend line tools, Gann and Fibonacci tools, patterns, forecasting and measuring tools, geometric shapes, annotation tools like text, for example. I can put in something, icons like emojis, for example. I can measure, zoom in, magnet, and so on and so forth. So let's have a quick look here at the different tools. So trend line tools, you basically find everything that allows you to visualize how the trend currently of, in this case, Bitcoin is. Starts here with a simple trend line. So if I select this and I click here on the chart, I can freely draw a trend line here. For example, maybe I want to visualize, oh, this is the underlying long-term trend we have here since January of 2024 in Bitcoin. I could do it by this. Now you'll see here there's a menu popping up which lets me manipulate also how I want my trend line to look. So I could, for example, change the color here. Again, I could make it almost invisible, opaque, or have it fully visible. I can change here how the thickness of my trend line is. If I want, for example, a solid line or a dotted line in this case, and I can even go here into the details and say like, where does my trend line start and where does it stop, if I want to be very precise with this. And again here, visibility also, I can add a text here, which is also very neat to my trend line. If I have a lot of trend lines, for example, here, that definitely makes sense. So you can see here now the text is appearing there. And I could even set an alert for this trend line. For example, here saying like, if Bitcoin US dollar crosses this trend line, or for example, crosses down of this trend line, I want to be notified by alert. And this is very practical if you are trading with a lot of those visual tools, a lot of trend lines, Fibonacci retracements, and so on and so forth, that you can automatically generate alerts here that will send you messages once that happens. For example, you could say like, maybe in the past you did something like this. You thought, oh, there's a triangle, and I want to be notified if either Bitcoin breaks out to the north of this triangle or to the south of this triangle. So very neat tools here. You can do the same here for horizontal lines, for vertical lines, and so on and so forth. So if you want to point out specific things, for example, like, oh, here, this was the candle where Bitcoin finally broke out of its channel, you can visualize this as well. You have a lot of so-called Gann and Fibonacci tools here. Now, without me going too much into detail, what really is a Fibonacci retracement, what is a Gann channel or Gann box in this case, very easy to access as well. So this would make sense, for example, if we want to analyze now, since the beginning of this bull market in Bitcoin, where are the different retracement zones? And you can see here already, which is always funny in my opinion, how well these zones work. So in my case here, I've also, again, visualized those with different colors, which you can freely use here. You can, again, select the thickness. You can, again, select the individual colors you want here for the Fibonacci levels, the exact coordinates, and so on and so forth. Very helpful tool. I highly recommend that you use that. We have here, if you are into sharp patterns, for example, or in Elliott Wave, which is very popular as well, a tool that helps you to draw Elliott waves or so-called XABCD patterns onto the chart. We have here also, and this is very neat, tools that can help you to analyze what is your risk-reward ratio, for example, for your position. So you want to enter a long position in Bitcoin. You could say like, oh, I want to pretend like I want to buy here. I want to have my stop loss here, and my target is, because maybe I believe that Bitcoin will break out over 110,000 to at, let's say, 136,000. And what we can see then immediately is we have in a visual way now on the chart, where is my stop loss, where is my take profit for this position, and how would my risk reward ratio be for this position. So in this case, 2.16. Meaning for every dollar, for every amount of money, unit of money that I'm risking, I can earn 2.16 times something back. You can, of course, here also, again, if you double click on it, simulate this exactly with your capital and all kinds here of changes for the how things are presented visual. For me, also a tool I use a lot here are the so-called price ranges. So if I want to have a quick view and analyze like, oh, from here to the very top, what movement was this? Oh, okay, 18.06%. If from today, for example, 48 bars, so or 50 days into the future, this would bring us, here to the 19th of March 2025. Another tool that you're probably going to work a lot with here are those text and note tools. So very neat as well. Of course, you can also define here again if you want a background color. So I might say, for example, oh, I don't want a background color. You can change the text itself, the size of the text, if you want it bold or if you want it cursive and so on and so forth. So whenever you have annotations for the chart, you can do that with this tool. A lot more here, and they are always adding to this. You could, for example, also upload an image here from your computer if you want to display that in the chart. Another thing here, so-called emojis that you can add here if you're like very much in love with Bitcoin. You could, for example, add here this heart emoji and adjust the size to whatever you want. So a lot of things, to play with, obviously, as well, but some powerful tools here if you want to draw information onto the chart. On the right here of the chart, we have a so-called watch list. So this is, I call this one overview. You can create here as many lists as you want, for example. So for me, these are kind of the assets that I like to look at every day, so that I quickly have there. And the nice thing is here, when I click on an asset, for example, I can say something like, I don't want to look here at Bitcoin anymore. I want to look at Ethereum now. I just need to click on it. And then I get automatically the chart for Ethereum, or for the S&P 500, or maybe I'm a currency trader, want to have a quick look here on euro dollar. You can add assets here by clicking on plus. You can get an advanced view also, which is also very neat here, which gives you a bit more detail about the assets, and especially will also show you, for example, if you're into stocks here, upcoming earnings. So since I have, for example, Tesla here on my daily overview, I can see, in the next 14 days, precisely on the January the 30th at 5, I guess it's 5 a.m. in the morning, Tesla is going to have their earnings published, and the estimated earning per stock here is 77 cents. So I always have kind of an overview of all the, especially if I'm into stocks, of the stocks that I'm currently watching, that I don't miss like important things like this, because these earning events are, of course, also market movers, right? I can access here also all the alerts that I'm currently using. I can see the log of my alerts that were triggered in the past. And last but not least, I have here the chat functionalities. So if you want to, for example, engage in chats with other traders out there that are currently looking at your symbol or other symbols as well, you can do that here. There are many, many groups out there that talk about different things. If you get private messages, you'll see those also up here where you can chat like directly per private message, then also with other users. So if you want to send a message to me privately, feel free to do that. I would see that message when popping up there. So this was, in a nutshell, really the basic functionalities of a charting tool. Maybe sounds a little bit complicated, and I've probably shown you here about 40% of what is possible with here. If I need to summarize it, I think the most important is that you get a hang for how do I draw things on charts here, for example, trend lines, because this is one of the most important things, to always be aware what is the current trend phase the asset that I want to trade is in, and how do I add indicators here, how do I change the time frame of my chart, and how do I change the chart itself. Let's quickly go back to the main page here of TradingView. Now, one more feature that I would like to show you here on TradingView is the so-called economic calendar. You find this under products, calendars, or on the very below right here, but at the moment you cannot see that because I have my screen overlay here, so we'll access it here from calendars. economic calendars. An economic calendar is displays all the important economic publications of countries that probably are going to affect the markets. For example, we can see here that we have a number of releases still today that are coming out, and that we had already a number of releases that came out in different countries. One tip here really is that you should have this activated here, this little icon called only high importance. So if I click on this, you see most of the data disappears, and it only leaves me with the economic releases that are very likely going to move the markets a lot. For example, today, this is going to be the so-called durable good orders, which are coming soon, which are going to be published soon. If I click here on further details, I can also see how was that in the past, the last readings, what are durable goods, for example. I can add them to my calendar. I can launch a chart directly here, so I can analyze how was the result of this indicator of this publication in the past. So again, here very powerful if you want to look in more fundamental analysis here. And one tip really I have for you here is, if you go through this, and especially if you see something like this here on Thursday, Fed interest rate decision. So the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the USA, deciding whether they want to keep the interest rate environment stable, or maybe they want to hike, or maybe they want to cut interest rates. These are very important events, especially if the actual number being released is very different from what is forecasted. This will highly affect the markets, and if you are a day trader, scalper, especially if you're a beginner, I would kind of try to stay away with your trading from these events, because it's very often that we see a lot of volatility to the upside or downside, and that you get stopped out of your trading positions unlucky. So this is information you can always access here from the so-called economic calendar. We have the same here for earning. So if you are trading stocks, for example, of course you want to have a look here also on which companies are currently going to release here data on their capital. We can see revenue forecasts of companies. We can see dividends, like which company is when going to pay how much dividend on their shares, and how much is the dividend yield, for example. So a powerful tool. It's really, for me, every week essential for my planning and trading, that I have a look which data, especially economic data, is coming out when, so I can decide like when do I actually want to be in the market, when don't I want to trade. Or I can, for example, also expect something like, well, on Thursday we are going to have a lot of important economic data, and especially interest rate decisions on the market. So probably this market will be a little bit strange behavior-wise. So maybe I just want to stay at the side and not trade at all, or maybe I want to trade with a lower position size. The last tool I want to show you here today is the so-called screener. So I can screen different asset classes here for information. For example, crypto coins. If I click on this, I can see plentiful information about the cryptocurrencies that are traded at the moment. For example, this overview now is sorted by market cap. I can see here number one Bitcoin, for example, with a market cap of slightly over 2 trillion US dollars, followed by Ethereum, and so on and so forth. And I can manipulate this data, of course, like in the way that I, for example, say, oh, I want to sort all the coins by performance. I want to sort them by valuation, or by active addresses, or by sentiment, or I want to have an overview which are the ones that were gaining or losing the most over, for example, a period of time. So also a very powerful tool here if I want to get an overview of a market. And this is available, of course, not just for cryptocurrencies. You can see the same here also for stocks, for example. So I'm looking here at the US market now, for example, but you can also select other markets where that you want to analyze, where I can see, for example, have an overview of how was the performance of the different stocks there on the US market, and those are almost 14,000, by the way, over the course of, for example, the last year, 5 years, 10 years, last month, last week, and so on and so forth. And I can sort this information here as well if I want to see, for example, which was the stock that was performing the best in the last week. Was this company. I don't know what this company is, but it had a return on investment of, wow, 300,000%. That is, that's crazy. So some of the this might help me, for example, if I'm somebody who wants to intraday trade like low cap stocks, for example, or you might want to do the same here, for example, with cryptocurrencies, to find like lower market cap cryptocurrencies that you then want to trade, right? I can, of course, if I right click here on this as well, add this, for example, to my watch list. I can open here a chart directly, or I can get an overview of if I want to see like what is this stock, whatever. I've never heard about this actually all about. We can see it's pretty much empty here. So all information, all the menus that I was showing to you just now are always also available, usually if you do a right click on that. And yeah, this brings us already to the end of our comprehensive guide of how to use TradingView. I hope it helps you to get started in TradingView. It's a powerful platform. It's still, after all these years, my go-to platform because it allows you to see a lot of the data that usually is only accessible to institutional traders. And I'm sure you don't want to pay something like $2,000 or $3,000 for a Bloomberg terminal every month. So here's a solution that is much, much cheaper, easy to use, and gives you really all the tools that you need as a trader, as an investor to succeed on the markets. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.